got, as I said, a guest, Sylvia Baffour, who is coming all the way from Ghana just to be with us today. We'll take a look at this quick video and we'll talk to her in just a moment.
Emotional intelligence is indeed the currency of the 21st century. You cannot be an effective leader if you're simply relying on your intellectual ability. As the saying goes, emotions drive people, and it is people that drive performance. I'm Sylvia Baffour, and I have a passion for helping people and organizations achieve peak performance, and I like to do this with emotional intelligence strategies. I wholeheartedly believe that if you're a leader who cares about the performance of your organization, then you must care about what you are doing personally to acquire the skills necessary to help you with important things like building trusting relationships, motivating your teams, having those difficult conversations with empathy, navigating change and uncertainty, and so much more.
Wow, Sylvia, that sounds so great. Welcome to WIN TV. I'm glad to have you with us, especially on the heels of Dr. Jolly's really sort of how we personally deal with our own personal lives. Let's talk about emotional intelligence. What is that? And what does a person like you help us to, embrace that or succeed with it? Talk about what Sylvia does.
Well, thank you for having me, and greetings to everyone. Denise, you can hear me?
Yes. Very well.
Okay, perfect. So this is the way I like to look at emotional intelligence. It's simply how aware are you of your emotions in any given moment of the day? And then how much do you care about the impact your emotions have on you and the people around you? So that is emotional intelligence in a nutshell. Are you using your emotions to work for you or against you? In fact, I think I once heard a comedian say it best when he said, the effect that you have on others is the most valuable currency there is. And I'll repeat that again just for second hearing, because it was so profound for me. The effect that you have on others is the most valuable currency there is. Because if it's a good effect, it buys you so much, right? Favor and collaboration and more business and inspiration, it buys you a lot, influence, So that's really important. So in a nutshell, that really is emotional intelligence. And when I work with individuals in coaching them, I'm helping people in a customized way because everyone's going to have their own needs, right? I mean, I work, for instance, with a VP of HR at the moment who is not known as a people person, ironically, for being in an HR role. And so we're working on particular strategies to help her be more approachable, to build that trust that her team is relying on, and just helping, how can I help you become the kind of person that others truly enjoy and want to be around? That's really it in a nutshell, because we don't exist in isolation, right? We live in relation to other people, and the most happy people in the world are those who have meaningful and sustained connections with other human beings. And we cannot do that if we don't care about how we are moving through this world.
Well, we're going to, I know your dog is having some emotional needs right now, but
it's the neighbor's dog, actually.
Oh, it's the neighbor's dog.
It's the neighbor's dog, just loud, sorry.
They love to participate in conversations. But so as a coach, and especially at this time, like in a new year, how do you get people to achieve goals and intentions and really focus in on that emotional intelligence? Because I don't think it's anything we really ordinarily think about. We know we experience feelings throughout the day, right? But like you said, not understanding the impact on other people. So let's talk about, what a new year sort of looks like for a person like you who's coaching people.
Yeah, so essentially, if I'm sort of summarizing what I'm understanding in your question, is really how can we use emotional intelligence, or EI, as we often call it, to help us be more intentional, right, about the way we're achieving in 2023. And, I do agree with Dr. Jolly when he mentioned the fact that resolutions should be tossed out, right? This idea, most of us by January 25th, as he said, we're done with our resolutions. But I want to go a step further than that, because while I think it is important to set goals and be specific, I'm a little bit contrarian in that here are three things I would think about, because one of the foundational elements of emotional intelligence is your self-awareness, right? There's self-awareness, emotional management, empathy, and relationship management. Those are the cornerstones of EI. And so these steps essentially focus around self-awareness, which is the foundational aspect of building your emotional intelligence. And I want to talk about the fact that if you're going to be intentional about the way you achieve in 2023, three things should be happening. One, you want to examine your intentions. Two, you want to focus on the type of person you want to become. And three, you have to rid yourself of what I call expensive stories. And I'll explain that in just a quick moment here. So the first one is, oftentimes, with these New Year's resolutions, life happens to us and they're out the window, right? So my contention to you is examine your intentions for the goals you've set for the year. Why are you doing what you're doing financially, or in the health and fitness sphere, or in your relationships? Are you going after those goals in 2023 because of how it's going to make you look to others, or how it's going to allow you to feel like you belong, or are you pursuing these as almost like a lifestyle that will become a part of who you are? Because the goals that we set for ourselves that are predicated on how we're going to look to others, to have that new car or be in that swaggy relationship, those tend to fall by the wayside pretty quickly because they're superficial. They're not grounded in anything that meets our heart and our soul. So examine your intentions, right? That's, I think, the first
makes
one.
sense.
Yeah, and then the second is to focus on the type of person you want to become. And I heard this and was inspired by James Clear. Some of you on the call might have read his book, Atomic Habits. And so this strategy comes essentially from him, where he talks about the fact that don't think so much about outcome-based goals, right? Like, I want to lose 25 pounds. Don't focus so much on the outcome, but rather think about the type of person who achieves that, right? So if you want to lose 25 pounds, ordinarily you might say, okay, this means I have to go to the gym 5 days a week. I have to get on a keto diet. I have to do X, Y, and Z. So you make a plan around getting to this 25-pound weight loss. And you assume that if I do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to lose 25 pounds. But what is much more inspiring, and we talk about entrenched, we want habits that will last throughout the year, right? Because a goal can be finite. But instead of focusing on the outcome of losing 25 pounds, you should say to yourself, who is the type of person who could lose 25 pounds, right? Because that type of person who could lose 25 pounds is perhaps the person who only eats out once a month, right? Or, so essentially what he calls it is identity-based habits. So he said every action you take, right, about as you're pursuing your goals, is just simply a vote for the kind of person you want to become. And I think this is brilliant, because if we attach what we want to achieve in 2023 to our identity, who we want to be, we're much more likely to work on that even when we fall off the wagon. If your goal is to be a good parent, right? So you think to yourself, well, who is the type of person that is a good parent? If your answer, for instance, is it's the type of person who comes home every night to have dinner with the family, gadget free, right? So you're now creating habits around an identity versus just saying that good parent is somebody who doesn't curse at their kids every day, right? So I think that's a really powerful strategy as well. It's the self-awareness to say, can I focus on who I want to become in 2023 versus just looking at specific
goals? Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. It really does. Now, I mean, you've written a book. I don't know. You may be like Dr. Jolly. Well, you have a whole bunch of them behind you. But I know you. Tell me a little bit about the inspiration for the book, and and who inspired you essentially to go down this path.
Okay, so really, in a nutshell, I was inspired by Dr. Maya Angelou, who I had the humble privilege of being mentored by for the last 13 years of her life, and it was just such a privilege to be in her presence, to ask her questions. I actually met her initially when I was waiting tables at B. Smith's restaurant in Union Station in DC about 21 or so years ago, when I was just starting out in the speaking and coaching industry. And she took me under her wings and would make time for me at her home in Harlem so I could pick her brain and ask her questions. So that's a big place of where my inspiration came from. And many of you are familiar with the quote that she's most remembered by, right? That people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Right.
And that's what emotional intelligence is all about. So the book itself is not very clinical. It's not scientific. I often say to people that if you're looking for an emotional intelligence book that will make you feel like you've earned a PhD by the time you're done reading, then this is not the book for you. But if you're looking for a book that has stories that captures everyday people's lives using or not using emotional intelligence and the aftermath of that, then this might be useful. So it's simply a book that shares strategies for how can you raise your self-awareness? How can you manage your emotions better, right? We all get triggered by certain things. How can you manage it in a way that allows you to still bring your best to each day? How can you show empathy? Because empathy is something that we need most with people we can't relate to or disagree with. Empathy with people you agree with is not necessary, and it's not about being nice, but empathy is about allowing others to feel seen and heard, even as you disagree with them. And then, of course, if all those things are happening well, then your relationships are thriving. And so all of that is in the book, with many stories, a breakdown of how specifically I met Maya Angelou, and the expensive stories I talked about. I think in the interest of time, we may not get to that, but I talk about ridding yourself of what I call expensive stories as you move into the new year.
Wonderful. Sylvia, this has been really good. I really, really appreciate you coming to talk with us today. And we may want to examine this a little bit more as we move forward. Where can people get your book?
So my book is on Amazon. It's I Dare You to Care, but if you would like an autographed version, then you can go to sylviaspeaks.com, the website, and under the tab for book, you can find that. Then I can autograph it personally. I don't have too much control about how Amazon fulfills the book. But either one, you can. And also there's an audiobook version. If you're somebody like me who likes to ingest books with the auditory, then I have an audiobook version as well on Amazon.
Well, I wish you so much more success, because your success means a success for a lot of people who get the words and the coaching that you provide. So thank you so very much. What time is it where you are right now?
It is just about almost 6 o'clock.
Okay. All right. The end of the day.
Dinner time.
Happy New Year to you. And thanks again for being with us.
Thank you, Denise. It was a pleasure and a privilege. Thank you.
Alrighty. My pleasure. Bye-bye. My pleasure.
Where do you come to get all you